Lunch and Learn. Today's event is being co-hosted by Folus Technology, who is a Syxsense Gold partner. I'm Lori Van Dueselaar, account executive here at Syxsense. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. If you could please keep yourself on mute until the Q&A session, I would greatly appreciate it. However, if you do have a question during the session, please feel free to use the chat feature. Otherwise, we'll be opening it up at the end for Q&A. We've got a full agenda today, so without any further delay, I'd like to take a few minutes to tell you a little bit about Syxsense and then introduce you to my co-host for today, Laura Macias, Business Development Manager with Folus Technology, and we're also joined by John Cassell, Senior Solution Architect here at Syxsense. In this post-COVID world, half the workforce have gone to a work-from-home environment, pushing IT to adapt and manage a large-scale remote workforce. The movement to work from home has resulted in smaller offices and a more distributed environment. With 46 billion connected devices outside the firewall, including 5G direct connect devices, we can no longer rely on the office firewall to protect the enterprise. Add to that, there's been a 91% increase in cyber attacks since COVID. The threatscape has never been more active. In a single pane of glass, Syxsense combines IT management, patch management, security vulnerability scanning, and remediation in one powerful solution. So what sets us apart? Syxsense is cloud-native hosting in Azure with support for Windows, Mac, Linux, Chromebooks, and mobile devices. We combine configuration security, patch management with a single agent in a single console on a single license. Syxsense Enterprise brings remediation to our customers. Not only do we find security vulnerabilities, but using Syxsense Cortex workflows, we can orchestrate and automate your remediation efforts. Our customers love us, and they're more than happy to share their experiences and positive impact that Syxsense has made on their environment. Please feel free to visit any of the following websites to read more about what customers are saying. At Black Hat in Las Vegas earlier this year, we announced the launch of a zero trust model as a critical component of our Syxsense Enterprise platform. As a result, our CTO, Mark Reed, was recognized as one of the top CTOs in our industry for innovation. Recently, Syxsense has been recognized by Tech Ascension Awards as the best endpoint security solution of 2022. And now I'd like to pass it over to Laura to introduce herself and Folus Technology. So over to you, Laura.
Thank you, Lori. Hi, everyone. I hope all of you are enjoying this holiday season. Let me introduce myself. I'm Laura Macias, and I'm the Business Development Manager at Folus Technology. We have been working with Syxsense as a gold-level partner, providing unified security and endpoint management solutions to our clients. To give you a little background on Folus Technology, we help companies to mitigate and control data loss through our IT consulting services. And it is also important to us to support our service through innovating technological tools, standards, and good practice that make possible to create competitive business to provide solutions to today's challenges. We offer different types of services. You can always trust us when you need support on disaster recovery as a service, data center hardware maintenance and monitoring, endpoint patch management, vulnerability scanning and remediation solutions, business intelligence and business analytics, managed backup services, mobile and device management, software as a service data protection, third-party hardware maintenance, and we also provide cybersecurity consulting services for compliance. Finally, through all these solutions, we help companies to establish security policies and protocols to prevent information systems downtime and critical business information from being lost. So you can find us on our social media platforms like LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook as Folus Technology, and you can visit our website that is www.followstechnology.com. I hope you're enjoying this Lunch and Learn and have a happy holidays. Now, John Cassell, the Syxsense Senior Architect Solutions, will walk us through some simple and effective methods to gain full visibility over your IT environment through granular reporting structure and easy-to-use drag and drop automated workflows. Over to you, John.
Thank you both. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Quick thumbs up if we're good. Laurie, I see you on camera. All right, excellent. All right, so as Laurie had pointed out, Syxsense is a single console, single agent solution. We are hosted specifically in Microsoft Azure, just so you know. You don't have to have Azure, just so that, of course, you don't have to host anything on premise. You can access the console from, of course, anywhere, as well as devices can access the console as well. Even if they happen to be off-premise, that's perfectly fine. We do support on-prem as well as off-prem type environments, say for a virtual corporation. Prepackaged agents are included for any version of Windows in the form of a simple MSI. Of course, that can be pushed through any existing tool, any any existing deployment method that might already exist, say group policy. Mac OS, same, as well as various distributions of Linux. We are well known for, of course, supporting all three quite well, including different versions going back to earlier on in the decade. And then as well, a lot more than aren't even listed on the screen. So we'll support others, of course, like Alma Linux, Rocky Linux, Oracle Enterprise Linux, so quite a bit. Although we don't require anything on premise, I do always like to mention we do offer some optional other features using a separate agent, such as local discovery across IP ranges, Active Directory integration, Wake on LAN, as well as even a built-in proxy server with the same exact agent, would allow machines, say, behind a certain firewall that can't talk to the internet directly to still be manageable. So even for those very strict on-prem environments, we can still manage those just the same. When we talk about mobile device management, now we're talking a little bit more about not so much implementation, but instead enrollment. We do support those as well. Of course, many different Apple products, iOS, iPadOS, even tvOS, and I think watchOS as well applies. And then different versions of Android. With Android, we also offer deeper containerization, such as user-owned or company-owned policies. And I'll go through a few of these features later on in the demonstration, such as talking about what we can do for application enforcement and even policies if devices happen to be on, say, the managed network. Do you want to use plain text passwords or do you want to enforce certificates? So there are a lot of additional options we can also set up. Throughout the demonstration, you'll see the same dashboard all throughout the different sections. I just like to mention now it is fully customizable. You'll also notice in my demonstration there are going to be a lot of different portions of, say, features like patch management policies, Cortex workflows. Most of what I would like to show and what I typically do is all default. So I don't customize too much in my demonstration. So it's not like I'm showing you a bunch of stuff that I've been doing for years, although I have been using the console for some time. This, as well as a lot of those other sections, are provided on day one. The beauty, of course, with these dashboards is we can customize as much as we want. We do offer reports as well, and I'll give you guys a few samples. I always like to mention as well on the prepackaged report side, if anyone would like additional sample reports after today's demonstration, just let us know. I have a good 24 I can always send along and kind of give you a better perspective as to how we do our reporting. Now, with Syxsense, there are various ways to perform a process. One of those might be more, say, asset focused. Not a popular method in the long run, but if we ever have to reach out to a device, say in real time, we do offer those features. We can manage devices on a larger scale as well, say asking questions across machines like what hardware or software attributes they might have in common, knowing that this data might always change, which devices do or don't have Chrome installed. But as well, we can always go to a device directly and perform an additional task, such as remote controlling or setting down certain tools. Before we do that, actually, I would like to highlight the fact that every machine that is currently connected will let you know in about 5-second intervals. That same interval, which is in near real time, would also allow you to send commands down to those machines. We do that through either our remote control tool, through the Cortex workflow editor, which we'll get to in just a few moments, and then as well a lot of the other remote tools in case we want to send a command down immediately. This would be, for example, with 2A file transfer. We can reach out to it and send files back and forth. Of course, all these tools are audited. I'll get into console security in a few moments, but of course we can audit everything that's being done throughout the console, as well as you can even customize what some users within your console can actually see and do. This is a very popular one. Some of my customers actually allow access for a help desk user to access the file browser, but not have the ability to delete or change the file structure. So there is a lot more customization we'll see in just a few moments. Something Syxsense is well known for as well is patch management. And we'll also take a look at the kind of next step above that when it comes to more general terms like vulnerabilities. We do separate the two, mainly because everything that's listed as a patch, if you compare us to a conventional scanner, we can deploy. Everything that's listed as an update can easily be resolved. This is not a very popular method of deploying, of course, going to one device and deploying a few updates to it, but we can actually select all, keep things easy from here, as well as if we want to place higher weight on certain patches, certain vulnerabilities, it's also another perspective that we will offer. Especially when it comes to patch management or vulnerability assessment, some products only give you one view. They might give it to you in an endpoint by endpoint view. Some might instead focus only on the content view. You can take ours, of course, either direction. It does not have to be this two-phased, such as scan now, deploy later. Our deploy task actually always pre-checks before updates might be deployed. Whether we set something as completely automatic, that's okay. Again, it will always pre-check and only deploy updates if required. Another part of Syxsense's process when it comes to patches is they are pre-vetted. So that means before they even join the console, they will be pre-tested for any obvious issues. And that's something we've been doing for well over a decade. All updates are still genuine, still provided on release day. This just ensures that if any discrepancies have been found, say just a few hours after release, the update won't be in the listing and automatically deployed by accident, or rather we will provide notifications always in the form of alerts and emails to our full customer base. This includes support for not just operating system updates like Windows, Mac, and Linux, but also various third-party products. And there's a big term out there when it comes to patch management and updates, especially with change control. What about the life cycle of the patches? If we've missed a few weeks, have there been multiple versions? Well, we also handle that to color code each update to let you know if a patch has already been replaced. We color code it to let you know it's been replaced, but as well, we point you to the latest. And that is another feature or I would say benefit as well with our content team. We can group updates still, although nobody wants to do that. We can set up filters, keep things a little easier, kind of allowing for a less of an approval route, still automatic, but focusing on only the required updates that we're after. When we scale up and look at more than just a patch, Syxsense also performs vulnerability assessment. Now, for many of these, it might not be as easy as just say, go deploy a patch. It might include, of course, the numbers that we want to focus on, seeing where do we actually exist when it comes to, say, antivirus issues, or say Windows policies and misconfigurations. Many of these do have fixes, however. We do, of course, provide the assessment piece, letting us know which particular vulnerabilities, where they exist, which devices they're detected upon, but also additional pieces to fix them. Our content team not only provides the assessment piece for detection, recommendations on how to solve it if you want to do it yourself, but also solutions built into the console, which you'll see here as a preview of our Cortex editor, prepackaged solutions to instantly go change that registry key or delete a malicious binary. And with Cortex, this is where a lot of the fun takes place. We can use those prepackaged resolutions, keep things super easy, not have to get too in depth. We also have a lot of customized kind of, I'll say, they're mostly built, but of course there might be some additional pieces that every environment might require. Of course, every environment's a little different. This would be one of them. It's setting us up for an automated patching route. There might be a few additional pieces we have to enter in, like our email. So if something goes wrong, you don't want to send it nowhere, but who should we notify? But it is actually allowing us to take a much easier route when it comes to patch management or for vulnerability assessment, but asking other questions along the way. Not just, hey, check for patches, let the end user know we're about to deploy if patches are detected, and then go directly to a deployment, but asking other questions like resources, do we have enough disk space? If the device is in some type of concerning state, we even have options to quarantine devices, which would ensure that that device is instantly isolated from the internet, from any device locally, but it will still check in temporarily to the cloud server. Of course, a lot of prepackaged examples. If we ever want to customize, there are so many additional tools when it comes to the Cortex workflow editor. This would include firewall enforcement, additional resources like CPU or RAM, executing disk cleanup. Maybe if it doesn't have enough disk space, we can add that into the mix. Tweaking of the firewall if necessary. User options like check who's logged in, log them out, process and service control, and so many other options whether it comes to Linux, Mac, or especially Windows. We can check for those processes and kill them. We can tweak the registry. We can check to see if they're on a network. Even though the sequence itself does not require any scripting knowledge, if you are still comfortable with those functions, you can still use them. So still support, of course, for batch, PowerShell, and even bash scripts on Unix-like devices. We can get extremely complex too when it comes to Cortex. This is, I would say, a much easier example. If we even want to use it to sequence out, say for on-prem devices like member servers, ensuring that hypervisors are taking the appropriate route. This one, of course, a little bit more complex, but does perform that initial baseline, checking for device statuses, especially if with this one being, again, for patch management, but also for hypervisor responsible for hosting VMs, we want to stop them first. So it does allow us, again, to take that kind of pre and post task route, still resource usage if necessary. This one's obviously taking a lot of arrows all over the place, but as well taking those arrows in the correct route to notify us if something specific goes wrong. All unlimited, we can create as many as we need. This is a preloaded example for Hyper-V servers, but of course we can tweak it to match another operating system. These can be scheduled out, although the more popular route for Cortex policies is to specifically take an interval. We can run these as fast as every 5 seconds. Maybe we don't want to do that with a Hyper-V deployment, but if it's something as simple as performance monitoring or a service check, it's an excellent example to check for these on a routine basis, or I would recommend, in fact, probably closer to real time. Checking for services that should be up. If they don't happen to be up, taking the appropriate routes to notify, say the help desk, create a ticket, check for the process if it happens to be hung, kill it, wait for a certain amount of time, and start the service over again. So it doesn't really have to be so much for deployment, for pushing out software, for pushing out patches. Of course, all the other tools with Cortex allow us to check and then make the appropriate decision to take the next route. We also have an email approval option in case you want to get the email in your inbox first to say, hey, something's wrong. Do you want to do it now? You don't have to be logged into the console. You can address that email in your inbox and just say approve, yes, take the next route. Now, other methods of scheduling, if we want to stick to calendar-based, this is also a very popular method, which is called a maintenance window. They're a little bit more restrictive, but that's the point. We're well known for having restricted maintenance windows because we want to make sure that the amount of time that might be allowed for, say, a deployment or a change in the environment, especially if they're servers, are going to be limited to that certain time frame. If we are solution providers, we want to make sure that that time is expected from the customer. So especially with various maintenance windows for customer A or customers 1 through 99 or even more than that, they can have their individual schedules that apply to their requirements. And the great part about them, we can turn them on, turn them off. And we even offer some options, say for Windows devices specifically, which no other competitors really provide, Patch Tuesday reference point scheduling. Today is Patch Tuesday. We can actually tell this to be instructed to run on the second Tuesday of every month or a number of days past. That allows us to run not just one schedule, but many schedules around the same point in time. Given that every month the second Tuesday, of course, is going to be a different date, that ensures that, well, whenever the second Tuesday occurs, we'll handle our phased approach as we require it. Syxsense does offer storage for custom applications, custom patches. We can add in any MSIs, EXEs, scripts, even as in-depth as Ansible playbook files, specifically for Linux. Feature upgrades are essential, just a matter of which version we want to move to. I'm a few versions behind, obviously, but we can customize, say, any type of pre-deployment arguments, warn the end user beforehand, and essentially migrate them to the latest version. It even supports, or I should just say overall, technically supports Windows 7 all the way through Windows 11. With Syxsense licensing, it's simply based upon device count. We do not license based on administrators, and this is definitely where we differ from most of our competitors. Administrators are totally unlimited, and we are multi-tenant by default. As mentioned earlier with some of those tools, you can limit what certain individuals would have access to. We can even easily put ourselves in some of those other perspectives, which will refresh the console entirely. Putting myself in my sales team's perspective, they can't access every machine I've got, as well as not every feature that I'm allowing them. What I have allowed them to access are a portion of my lab. Now we switch back and then put ourselves in that full perspective again. For mobile management, it'll be the difference between Apple products and Android products. Apple products are typically profile-based. We can customize a lot of those through the Apple configurator, they call it, and get the appropriate options set. Android policy is more Google API-based, but it does allow us to instead restrict certain applications. We can pick and choose from the Google Play Store, as well as policy enforcement options if we want to get really in-depth with certificate options, Bluetooth adapters, really any feature that the device supports. We can go ahead and make tweaks to it if necessary. Not a requirement, of course, but does ensure that they are proactively set. So as new Android devices check in, they'll get that policy automatically. Lastly, Syxsense also offers endpoint zero trust options. This would be essentially for that key term trust evaluations, posture checks, a lot of other terms in there. This will look very similar to Cortex, although what it has done is essentially allowed Cortex policies to run within policies themselves. So instead, when we talk about one particular posture check, or I'm sorry, one particular trust evaluation, we can look at different posture checks to perform different functions, marking those devices essentially as being trusted or not trusted. Say if the antivirus product is not seen, mark the machine as not trusted, we have a concern. Or if a device has its firewall off, mark it as not trusted, and we can even take the additional step to isolate firewall rules, or especially isolate the whole agent itself. This actually I have available on one of my devices up here at the top. Looks like I lost connection to it. Let me go ahead and start that connection again. It should be currently not trusted because its firewall is disabled. And we'll also see so through one of the zero trust examples. We look at untrusted machines. There it is. We're going to go ahead and remote control it really quick so you can see that tool as well. Remote control, by the way, is built in-house, doesn't require additional licensing. We'll open up another tab and allow us instant access to that endpoint. We can provide consent if necessary. We can ask other questions. In this case, it's a demonstration device. No one's logged into it, so I'll never be able to demo it. But it does have its firewall disabled. I'm just going to go ahead and quickly choose the option here to switch it back on, as it should be. The zero trust policy could do this as well automatically, but I've not allowed it to. All the options are on. The firewall is fully enabled. A few moments later, since it's in a 10-second policy, should move this machine out of the untrusted status. And actually as well, one of my widgets does kind of color code it here, letting me know one device is not trusted. A few seconds later, it should fall out of that and be trusted again. Go back to devices and run that query again. Section. Let it run a little longer. Before we go ahead and answer some questions for you guys, and we'll check up on that before I stop sharing, of course. I want to make sure that goes back to the trusted status. We do offer, again, a lot of those prepackaged reports. Again, you do have customizable dashboards too. A few of the most popular would be our PCI reports. We have a lot of others for compliance like HIPAA and SOX. You can see, of course, I'm not very compliant. I have a lot of issues that I have to address. It's okay, it's a demonstration lab. Listing out the devices that still require attention, but more beneficial for auditors, also listing the vulnerabilities that we have to deal with, as well as listing published date and severity so that they're aware, of course, how long has that particular vulnerability been around and what is the ordered severity. If we want to look at this a little bit more holistically, not just towards, say, PCI compliance, we can assess from other vulnerability perspectives, other reasons why there might be issues. In this case, now we're listing out individual CVEs, individual misconfigurations, but still device by device, listing the reasons why. And if we want to zoom out even further, say a very high level executive report, we offer these perspectives too, like this vulnerability risk assessment. Now we're looking at pretty colors, general numbers, just assessing the whole environment, listing out the machines that have issues, a dynamic timeline, which can be customized, various sites that might be managed, whether we want to consider that machines might be in different locations, or if you're a solution provider ensuring that your customers are banded out separately. That's certainly an option too. Operating system breakdowns, and then now kind of down to the nitty gritty, ordering the vulnerabilities based on severity and the number of machines that have those vulnerabilities. If generated in the console, we can click these numbers. This is a PDF that I threw up into another tab, but all this data is still accessible device by device in the console. Like this report here, although it's going to be about 100 times more pages, allowing us to view each individual definition that might be affecting the environment. Back to this query, generated again, just want to see that machine move out. Should be trusted now. I guess not. So I have something to take a look at on this machine. It does have a trust evaluation to put itself back into the trusted status. Looks like the firewall is enabled. I'll just go figure out why that policy is not running. I may have turned it off actually by accident. Lastly, in our console, for any other features, kind of just over generally, we don't hide our support channel. Tech support is always accessible. Live chat is also included. There is an online help guide, so you can always learn at your own pace. This opens up a new tab and takes you through each individual section of the Syxsense console. There are also training videos and step-by-steps. More general options for the console. If you hate our report logo, that's perfectly fine. You can always upload your own. If you want to take a look at the whole audit log, like who is logging in, what are they clicking and performing? Another reason why we don't limit administrators. It's always great for accounting, auditing and accountability for every help desk user or console user per se to have their own account. That allows you as the customer to track each individual account. And as well, additional security options. We do, of course, include MFA for the console. Single sign-on is provided generally, so that can support any product out there like Okta, Azure AD, or any on-prem type setup. And geo-locking also popular. I wish more used it, but essentially locks down the console to only be accessible from certain locations. Of course, if this isn't easy, of course, the console can be accessed from anywhere. You can still apply all the other security options to make sure that it's still secure. We also include an API, lastly. If any integration is desired, this allows for access to other portions of the data that we are collecting, like that audit data, the inventory information, custom field information to integrate better with service desk tools. Cortex policies can be orchestrated, and as well any scheduled task and any users can also be provisioned. I'm happy to go back to any feature from the earlier. If anyone has any questions, I'm going to leave it at that.
Well, that was fabulous. Thank you, John. So if anybody does have a question, at the top of your screen, you'll see reactions and you can raise your hands, or you could just go ahead and unmute yourself to ask a question. And while you're thinking about those questions you may have, we did get some prior to the lunch and learn. So I'll go ahead and ask John some of the ones that we received. And then again, if you do have any questions, we'll address those before we say goodbye today. So John, first question I have is, how do you handle a 0-day vulnerability?
That's a great question. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen out again.
Okay.
So when it comes to 0-day, we can think about that as either assessing the 0-day vulnerability or resolving it. If we're talking about a patch, as mentioned, these will be included only about an hour or two after release. So if the vendor releases one, we'll have it near release time. Pre-vetted, of course, that's the delay to make sure that they do deploy properly. And if they don't, we want to make sure that we flag that. For any other vulnerability, especially ones that might be released saying, there is no resolution for it, but it is something that you want to detect and check for, it's the same release timeline. It doesn't take really a lot of testing, however, so it won't even really be up to the full hour. Once something has been addressed in the industry, we'll have it within the hour in the console to not only assess if it does have a resolution, like in the case of Microsoft releasing some over the past few years. They don't release a patch until Patch Tuesday, but they do release a workaround. The workaround would be supplied instead in a resolution as shown earlier, in which case, again, there's no patch, but Syxsense has the fix for it.
All right, the next question I have is, do you do third-party patching?
Absolutely. We include that in the standard patching library. There are also additional queries that we can filter out to view just third-party applications. If we look at the full list, it's about 80 unique applications. We can always add more to the list. Again, we have that custom patch storage, Or I always recommend if it's something we don't have, just let us know directly. We always want to build out the list with additional examples that would, of course, support more customers. Even though there are 80 unique applications, we go back many years, so you'll still have a lot of old versions if you need them, up to 1,700 different applications and versions from the past. We go back effectively 5 or 6 years.
So this one, I actually get this question a lot. What is the main advantage to using a patching tool like yours over WSUS, which is Microsoft's WSUS?
That's an easy one, and I could probably go on with that in probably 10 different ways. The first one being, of course, we do provide real-time connections. So that is that whenever anything is in progress, you'll be able to view the status on it, whether that be something like a generic scheduled task and just viewing the status of each device that's being targeted, listing out what is actually being done, as well as how we want to kick off those deployments. We can, of course, keep this super generic and just link some containers like SUS does and create the policy, but we also have those scheduling options to adhere to those specific timeframes, like maintenance windows, protected hours, and as well, we can always just say we want to kick something off right now. The reporting is much more in depth, as you saw through a few of those prepackaged reports, but even if we're just generally looking in the console, like going back to the patches table, sorry for flipping back and forth, want to show this for sure. We can definitely show it from a more high level perspective, like actually adding more columns to the patch library and simply seeing which updates are required most. We can select individual updates from this listing, which SUS doesn't do a great job at. But again, we're actually basing it off of that detection data. If we want to go patch by patch, those options are available. We can see which 10 machines make up this number. Or we can, again, just completely set and forget the whole policy. Syxsense always scans before it deploys. We do not have to get this in depth like a two-phased approach, which some tools force you to do. We can actually just create an entire policy that just says patch everything, making it much easier for you, and as well the Cortex editor itself will include any pre and post task actions, which of course we know SUS can't perform. And of course, as well, I mentioned earlier, third-party updates. SUS doesn't offer that library either. But as well, all these pre-actions, this is really where a lot of the power is going to be provided, which sets us, it's not even really the same kind of sport at that point when we're talking against SUS. Of course, we're offering a lot more options.
So the next one I have is, whose vulnerability scanner do you use, or is it your own?
It would be our own. So we do collect data from all the standards like NIST. We refer to CISO alerts. We have a lot of other sources out there that we tier out. Our lowest tier would include more article-based type kind of situations where we might read about something on an article site. It's not our main method, but we do kind of offer that in different perspectives. We want to diversify and say, hey, we don't just get it all from NIST and that's it. We do check our sources, and we have about 24 of them. The scanner itself is, again, our own process. The library we provide and we pre-vet and test. We classify them ourselves. Not for every single one of them. We do, of course, defer to NIST, so that CVSS severity will be provided, but for many of them, we do actually provide an authority for as well. This is more in the configuration management space, even though a lot of these for Windows are not really vulnerabilities per se. We do assess them in terms of how they can be exploited. So many we actually rate ourselves.
Great. Okay, I have one more and then I'm going to open it up and see if anybody else has any live questions. So get ready. I'm coming for you. Okay, so the last question I had was, what part does Syxsense play in a zero trust strategy?
Yeah, so for us, we're an endpoint management product. So this will be predominantly towards the endpoint directly. This would include, as mentioned earlier, like posture checks and evaluations of the endpoint itself. This can include not just detection and marking and flagging machines, but making changes too. The example we looked at earlier, basically when the firewall gets switched off, it marks the machine as not trusted and opens an alert. When it gets switched back on, it marks the machine as trusted. Well, I didn't really tell it to do it on its own. Of course, we looked at that earlier. I did it manually. We can actually make changes to it directly. So more closer to like full automation. So not just being notified, but actually making the change back. I could actually include, rather than saying mark it as trusted and, or sorry, not trusted and leave it at that, I can actually tell it to turn the firewall right back on, such as firewall status. Oops, no, I think it's actually firewall rules. Marking actually, we're customizing the firewall itself and doing a lot more. So For us, we fit in again in that endpoint category, hardening the endpoints, allowing, of course, all the reporting to go along with it. In near real-time checks, so as quick as every 5 seconds if we want it to be, not just a check, I know I used that term just now, but also to make that resolution. If something happens to go wrong and the machine is in a not trusted status, to adhere to those zero trust concepts, we can set the resources that we want to protect. So as part of any of the posture checks, if it's the firewall, if it's something around CPU usage or antivirus, when machines go into a not trusted status, like in this example, I have a few locations I would want to limit. If the device is in a not trusted status, do not allow it access to the CRM. So we can get very in depth with those firewall rules, whether it be IP based or URL based, or especially anywhere else in the machine that we want to tweak directly.
Great, thank you, John. So let me open it up. I don't know if anybody has thought about any other questions that they have. Let me give you a couple of seconds if you want to just unmute yourself and go ahead and ask the question. John is available, or maybe a question for Laura from Folus, or even myself. Okay, it looks like we must have done a fabulous job because we don't have any additional questions. So I would like to thank you all for joining us today. We hope you found today's presentation a viable solution for your organization. Laura will be following up with you to answer any questions you may think of and to provide you with the opportunity to set up a full demo. If you're interested, we'd love to meet with you and provide you with that full overview demo. So thank you again, everybody, for joining us. Wishing you all happy holidays. And Laura, anything else from your side before we say goodbye?
I also want to wish a happy holidays for all of you.
Thank you, everyone. Great job, Laura. Thank you, John. Awesome. And we will talk to you all soon. Take care. Happy holidays. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.